Welcome to the Pastor's Academy podcast, and I'm your host, Reverend Kevin Knox. Every week, an experienced pastor shares their best practices, power habits, aha moments, and hard lessons learned in ministry. If you like the podcast, you might also appreciate the insightful discussion that we have on our Facebook group, the Pastor's Academy. I want to share a very small story that explains the whole impetus behind this podcast. Way back in the 1970s, there was a gentleman named Paul who was attending the University of Southern California. Paul was dyslexic and he had attention deficit disorder. And his grades were indicating that the normal career path was not best suited for him. So Paul decided to start his own business. He took everything he had and leveraged that to rent a few storefronts and to buy some copy machines. Paul went into the copying business. Unfortunately, however, it didn't take long to find out that things were not going as planned. He was not making the money he expected, the bills were starting to pile up, and the bill collectors were starting to call. It looked like bankruptcy was just around the corner. Paul began to kick himself. What was I thinking when I started this business? Now I'm going to lose everything. And then what does the future hold? You know, there's nothing worse than losing your hopes, losing your dreams, losing your money, and feeling like a failure. Paul woke up from another sleepless night, walked to one of his stores, and asked one of his managers, "So tell me something that's working for you." And the manager had some great input. So Paul took that information and then spread it to the other stores. In fact, that was his new management style. All he did was go from store to store to store, asking the manager what worked, and then telling the other stores what was going on. Things turned around. He went from near bankruptcy to making a profit, then was able to buy some new stores. Then he started a franchise. Then it went international. And you may have guessed by now, I'm talking about Paul Orfalea, the founder of Kinko's. He sold that franchise for $2.4 billion. I can't help but think, what would happen if we as clergy would put aside our theological differences, our denominational differences, and focus on our one common mission of finding the lost and discipling those we found? I can't help but wonder, what would happen if we as clergy would collaborate on what works best? History tells us that it will change the trajectory of our ministry. The goal of this podcast is to give you at least one golden nugget every week that you can implement into your ministry. Let's get started.